I'm Rachel Martin. You probably know how interview podcasts with famous people usually go. There's a host, a guest, and a light Q&A. But on Wildcard, we have ripped up the typical script. It's a new podcast from NPR where I invite actors, artists, and comedians to play a game using a special deck of cards to talk about some of life's biggest questions. Listen to Wildcard wherever you get your podcasts, only from NPR.
You're listening to 89.9 FM, Mothers, War, and Violence podcast, and I'm your host, Yolanda Wallace. Today, we're reflecting on not-for-profits, and I have a new guest in our studio today. She's not new to WCBU, but she's new with Mothers, War, and Violence, and her name is Abigail Larrison. Welcome.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, and Abigail has been working so hard in creating and doing the things that she believes we need in our community. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about what she does. And go ahead, Abby.
Thank you, Yolanda, again for having me here and to be able to share a little bit about what we're doing at the community house. So the nonprofit was started in 2020, October 27th, 2020, and it has a purpose of trying to create loving community. My background actually was in neuroscience, and so it's strange now that I'm doing this kind of community work, but really the reason why I even went into the sciences was to try to create the opportunities to help people heal from mental illness and addiction. Those were the two areas that I was studying, and with a focus on attention in the brain. So that kind of led me down this path of studying attention and watching as we had this phenomena unfolding with the prescribing of amphetamines to children for attention deficit. And for me, that was a moral imperative that I speak out against this because I already knew from my research what the results of that would be. And I think people are becoming more aware of it, but that is kind of how my path started. I moved from there then into education and educational leadership in particular with the focus on how do we align our education in the classroom with the child's developing brain. And when I moved into that field, it was the end of No Child Left Behind and the beginning of what we now know as the Common Core State Standards, which is a national curriculum.
Okay.
We are locked into that curriculum, and it really is not serving our children. So we're in a situation now where our youth are kind of left without the kind of structure and guidance, not just in academics, but in life. Ultimately, the models of education that we're working with are mostly test-oriented, taking tests and doing well on tests. That doesn't teach you about who you are as an individual and where you fit in this world. So this project is really originally oriented towards youth, and that's a big piece of it. But it's for all people to start to discover who they truly are and what they're meant to be doing in this world.
And that's at the community house.
That is the community. That's the mission of the community house.
Okay.
To empower people to be able to direct their own lives and to create healthy and loving communities. So.
And can you elaborate just a little bit on the side effects of the medications for ADD and ADHD?
I'm happy to do that because that really was the pivotal turning point in my career path. And I think people do need to be fully and highly aware that
educated on that.
These are not drugs that ultimately lead to better attention in our students. In fact, in the long run, children who've been put on these show more signs of bipolar. Youth bipolar disorder, which was never a diagnosis before.
Really?
They also show greater oppositional defiant disorder, and then they also have a lot of side effects. And some of these side effects are permanent and physical. That is smaller heart size, smaller lung size, and even smaller brain size. I mean, we've known for years the effects of cigarettes on stunting a youth, the growth of infants and children. And these are stimulants, very hardcore stimulants that we're
Like
prescribing.
Adderall,
Yes,
what
and
are the
Ritalin.
names of them? And Ritalin and
Honestly, dextroamphetamine,
Okay.
but the brand names, they're almost all amphetamines. But if just give you another little side, I know we're kind of going down a different track, but
right.
the kind of nail in the coffin for me in the field of neuropharmacology, I was working at the Center for Cognitive Medicine, and they had a new drug on the market, and it was an NMDA receptor antagonist. If you're in neuropharmacology, you know what that is. For lay people, it's a PCP analog. So it acts in the same way in the brain as PCP does. So yeah, it creates a similar effect on the attention systems as the amphetamines ultimately.
Like a connector.
The way that it acts in the brain is it ultimately, in the systems level neuroscience, it changes the cortical drive. But what it means to us is that the students will look like they are behaving. Ultimately, can you imagine giving children PCP?
No.
And so that was my turning point. I said,
Okay.
I cannot participate in this. This is not right. Ultimately, that would have gone to, it's not an amphetamine. It's a non-amphetamine treatment for ADHD. But what are you doing? What are you thinking? To me, ADHD is not even a reliable diagnostic. To me, the children who are being diagnosed with attention deficit are actually our most creative children. And so I feel like the community house is designed to connect with those children, the children who I call the high creatives, the ones who are here to change the world, the ones who will become incredible alternative thinking leaders, the ones who will find the solutions to the real problems, the complex problems that we're facing today. These are the kids who we're telling them that there's something wrong with them. There's
that they're bad.
absolutely nothing wrong with them. And for if you're an adult and you have issues with attention, there are other ways. There are ways to work with what I call the creative brain. If you want to work with your creative brain, you just need to recognize that there are ways that you can create random structure in your life. And your will is designed to direct you towards your divine purpose. So if something's not interesting to you, it might not be the thing that you're meant to be doing for your divine purpose. These children are being taught things that are irrelevant. And this goes back to the Common Core, because the way the material is presented across the entire nation now is very fragmented. And one thing we know about learning and memory is that if there is no deeper connection with the content, it creates a network of cells in the brain for a memory, but they're not connected. It's a dead network.
So are you referring to like schools, the curriculum that's taught?
The current public education system across the entire nation now has a singular curriculum. It's called the Common Core State Standards, and every single school is required to follow this curriculum, which it's not based on what we understand about the developing brain, about learning. It's not based on the needs of the individual communities. And it's besides the fact that it doesn't address those individual needs, it's also extremely costly because schools are being forced to pay for textbooks and testing. That's billions of dollars being siphoned off from what could be used for infrastructure and for teachers and for art materials, and that's what these kids really need.
Yeah, hands-on experiences as well to make it mean something to them, and so that they can create and grow. You know, when we were kids, we had that type of environment.
And when you allow a kid who is diagnosed with ADD to follow their own interests, instead of having them follow some kind of external guide, you allow them to tune into what they want to do and follow their own interests, those children will do the most amazing work. They
accelerate.
are capable and competent. Just look at the work on dyslexia. These kids who are being beat down in the school system, they have the most amazing brains. They have the most amazing capacities to hold like large ideas and to work with those large ideas and to visualize those large ideas. Steve Jobs was dyslexic, and he created the GUI interface for what we use in all computers now because it's a visual system. It just so happens that it works for everybody. But what we're dealing with are people in power who are creating systems that don't meet the needs of the children that they're serving. And so the community house for me is a way of creating a space that will provide and meet those needs so that our children in our communities can be healthy and they can be independent rather than dependent.
I agree with that. I've gone by there and stopped and seen some of the things that the children were doing. The art is phenomenal there, that you allow them to explore the mask, that you allow them to explore gardening. I mean, you know, all these things that you're talking about, I've actually seen them into play. The one young man that I watched just pour seeds into the ground, and, you know, after he dug a hole with several seeds, and we're going to find out what it is. He didn't get reprimanded for doing something wrong. He was praised for being creative.
And that's it. You know, there's too much of this guess what I'm thinking game that teachers do. Okay, so tell me the right answer rather than like find out the solution or just explore and have creativity and curiosity. And this is what the kids who we're calling disordered really have. They just have intense curiosity. They're super high energy. They don't have a low will. They have a very strong will. And that will is so strong that it's so difficult for them to move it and direct it, because ultimately what they're looking at when they do direct their will is so meaningless to them. It doesn't have any depth or weight, where if you allow them to work from within, they will find the most meaningful and powerful points of reference for their work, and you'll see a complete transformation in them as a student. So that's been my experience. I also work very much with bottom-up type learning. So you learn through the experience. So there's ways of teaching math that I've discovered and written about, which allows children to experience the base 10 math system, and they're just playing it as games. You're not memorizing anything. It will go in automatically, and then it awakens that mathematical mind, which is a nonverbal mind. It's like the visual, spatial brain of the engineers. It's not a verbal mind. So when you have a teacher up at the front explaining everything, you're not awakening the mathematical mind. It's just there's other ways of doing things that the school is stuck in their old ways, and they're losing so many of the children who have gifts to share in this world, and their energy is being lost. Their role in creating a new social order is lost, because if you cannot read and you cannot do basic calculations, you are handicapped in this world.
Yes. That's
So
true.
academics are important, but they can be done in a beautiful and fun way. One more thing about learning. Learning is like a drug. It activates the exact same networks in the brain as taking drugs do. It releases dopamine in the drug reward circuit is the name of the region of the brain. When you learn something, when you're allowed to actually learn and not just memorize, when you're allowed to have the experience of aha, rather than the teacher giving you the answer and you're told to memorize it. We're taking away the joy of learning by forcing kids to get this material down, memorize it so they can regurgitate it on a test. And so by the time they're in junior high, their motivation networks towards learning are just completely shut down.
And sometimes that's why kids turn to the street or they turn to drugs or alcohol or something like that because they don't have anything to keep them interested and motivated and working all these things in their brain to problem solve, critical thinking, all these things, right?
I agree 100%. Like
and it's good to see that the community house does more than just work with kids. You also work with their parents.
Yeah, we're trying to build loving community, and we want to empower all of our community members to live their best lives. A big piece of this is addiction. So our community does have a fair degree of addiction, active addiction, and people who are coming into recovery. So we do host meetings that are focused on recovery from addiction, but also recovery from trauma. You cannot live your best life if you're addicted to drugs. And you cannot live your best life and live your purpose if you don't know who you are. So we have meetings, 12-step meetings for Codependence Anonymous, which is basically learning to love the self. And we also have NA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous meetings. We have a CA group, a wonderful women's meeting on Saturday, which is supporting women through their emotional lives and just the difficulty of living today.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like it's a well-rounded program where it really meets the needs of the family that talks about the things which is one of our missions with Mothers War on Violence, to tearing down strongholds. And everything that you mentioned are strongholds in our families that cause violence.
Yes, I agree. We are very much about being a safe space, no violence, and the kids are exposed to a lot of violence. So when we tell them no violence and no fighting, it actually, even if they do act out initially, I know that it makes them feel like this is a safe place. I know that it's so important for them to know there's an alternative to some of the things they've been experiencing. And then it's up to them as a choice. For the adults to be able to see the opportunity to get recovery, and that recovery is possible, and that they are, that people who have been worse than them are able to become sober and sustain their sobriety. This is very important to me. We also have supported people in their own entrepreneurial efforts, helping people start up their businesses, take that courageous step, and helping people with their websites, who are
their non-for-profits
in their whatever their own passions are. The goal is to help people step into their light and share their gifts. That's what we're meant to do. If everyone was standing in their light and sharing their gifts, this would be a very different world we are living in.
Well, thank you so much, Abigail. This is awesome, and I love the collaboration that you have with all the different organizations that come and visit the community house. I didn't know that there were so many organizations that come in there, but it's awesome to know that we have another safe place that is in the city. I mean, there are other safe places too, but when you go over here, where are you located?
We are at 2223 North Sheridan Road.
And when you pass by there, I see the flowers outside, you see the love on the garage, and it's right there on the corner. And you guys also help out with food and stuff like that, right?
We do. We have a pantry. It's Monday from 3 to 5:30. But if you step in and you need something, we usually accommodate.
Okay.
We want to help people, but we also don't just want it to be a handout.
Right.
We want you to come and join our community and participate. Maybe you just come and water the garden boxes, or maybe you come and do some art with us and spend some time with the kids.
Right.
The art garage, I didn't mention that, but that's where it all started. And we are renovating it, and we're going to have a grand reopening August 18th.
Okay.
So please come out and check it out. That's where it all started,
What
doing
time?
art in the garage. We do start at 3 o'clock. We might start a little bit early for our grand reopening. Let's just say anywhere between 12 and 6.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Larrison, for joining Mothers War on Violence. And we wish you well, and we'll have to stop back by there and visit the community house again. It is such a breath of fresh air just when you go in there. The colors, the paint on the wall, the art that you allow the kids to explore is just phenomenal. Thank you again for joining our show. Listening audience, you're listening to 89.9 FM, WCBU. We thank you for your sponsorship.